This is the first part of number 3. It says consider the following exam scores from an old statistics class. And here are the exam scores. It looks like there's 36 of them. Make up a frequency table where the class width is 8 and the lower class limit for the first class is 0. So we can start off with 0 here, and then we'll try to figure out what this upper limit is for the first class. You have to be careful, it's not 8. 8 would be incorrect here. Having a class width of 8 means if my lower class limit for the first class is 0, the lower class limit for the second class is going to be 8. Now we can't have 8 here obviously because it's going to overlap, and then we see a score of 8 here. We don't know which class to put it in, so it cannot overlap. So this has to be the number right before it. So that's probably the best way to do that, is to go on and go with 0, add 8 to that, add 8 to the next one, and then keep adding 8 until you complete the lower class limits of things. And then we can fill out the upper class limits. So we have 48, and then another 8 is 56, another 8 is 64. One thing to keep an eye on is the largest value we have is 74, so we want to make sure we include that. So I think with 72, having the lower class limit and then adding on to that would give us our final class. Now we have 8 here and 16 for the next class, so we can just go ahead and just subtract 1 from the next upper class limit. So we can go on with that process, or another thing we can do, I don't know if this is going to be any quicker, but you take your class width is 8, so I take my 7, add 8 to it, you get 15, add 8 to 15, you get 23, and then if you add 8 to 23, you get 31. So that's just another way to find these upper class limits. Of course, you could do it any way you want, so we'll just do it this way. And then once you come to the end of this, you should be able to answer the next couple of questions. So 71 plus 8 for the last one is 79. And had there been any scores in the 80s, I would have another class here at 80, but we can just stop here and say we're done. Now the next thing to do is, once you got the scores up here, you have to count the numbers that are between 0 and 7, including 0 and 7. So I see that there's a 4, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks like there are 4 numbers that fall in this particular class. Now you can go on and do that by crossing it out on your actual paper, so that would work fine. But if you have a calculator and you can put all those values in a calculator, a TI-84 or 83, what we can do is we can go to a stat plot and plot a histogram, and by doing a histogram we can actually see the values in these classes. Let's do that. So let's go to the second function in stat plot. If any of these are on, aside from the first one, you may want to just start off by turning everything off, plots off, and then if you press enter, then it's going to turn every single plot off. The other thing also that we probably want is to look at your y equals to here and just make sure that there's nothing there. So let's clear out anything we want by hitting clear. Now let's go to stat plot, and let's go to plot 1. So my 1 is highlighted already. I'm just going to go ahead and press enter, and let's turn this one on. Right now it's off. The cursor is blinking on, so I'll hit enter. Now it's on. Down arrow would give us several choices for the type of plots that we want. we're going to want this histogram plot. So let's click on that. Our X list is in L1 and our frequency is in 1. Now I already inputted the data in my L1 list, so that's the list that I'm going to use. Next thing we want to do is we want to set up a window so that it encompasses everything. So I'm going to go to the window. Let's try that again. Well, let's just bail out of this real quick and then go to window. Oops. There we go. Let's go to window and let's set up the window using the criteria here. The lower class limit for the first class is 0 and the upper class limit goes all the way to 79. So I'm going to go ahead and go one more to that and go to 80. My X scale, and this is the important part, is your class width. So let's go with 8 for the class width. Now the Y min and Y max just gives us a range of, more or less a range of what we're expecting our frequencies to be. I usually want to throw in a negative number here just so I can see some room below the x-axis, but really you don't, you can just go positive there, but I'm going to put a negative number there. The Y max would be the largest frequency. Now since we really haven't done this frequency table yet, let's just guess that maybe the largest frequency is 10. And oops, if we adjust that, if we need to adjust it, we'll adjust it a little bit later. So let's go with 10. And the Y scale will just be counting, since we're counting whole numbers, let's just leave the Y scale at 1. Let's go ahead and press graph. I see that the second bar over here goes a little bit higher. If I trace it, and right now it's blinking on the first bar, so my bar between 0 and 8, less than 8, so that would be the 7 here that we were talking about, has an N of 4. If I move right arrow, I see that my largest bar here has an N of 13. So that's what my next frequency is going to be. But for the sake of fixing up this picture, let's go back to the window. And let's change our Y max from 10 to maybe even a little bit beyond 13 to go past that. So let's go to 15. And then now let's graph it again. Now we see all the bars. Let's trace it so that we can find our frequencies. From 0 to something less than 8 or 7, from 0 to 7 we get n is equal to 4. From 8 to 15 we get n is equal to 13, so that's something that we've got already. And then we just keep scrolling down, keep scrolling to the right, that is, to get 4, 10, 3, 1. We got some zeros going on here. That puts our gaps between our data sets, and then the very last one is a score of 74. That's between 72 and 80, or 72 and 80, or 79, and that's 1. Okay, so let's fill out the rest of this table. We got 4, we got 10, we got 3, we got 1, some zeros, and the last one is a 1. So that is our frequency table. From here you should be able to find the relative frequencies, the cumulative frequencies, etc. How many classes are there? It looks like if we just count down, there should be 10 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And we do count these classes that have a 0 in them. We still do count them, so there are 10 of these classes. Draw a histogram. Our histogram is here already. We can just take a snapshot of this, or make it look nicer if we want, but this is fine. Let's paste our histogram here. And describe the distribution in words. So with this, it looks like it's not symmetric. It's not a bell-shaped curve. It looks like aside from this 4, there's a big lump over here where most of the data is, and it kind of shrinks down. So I think this data is actually skewed. And remember, to identify the direction in which it's skewed, you look at the tail end of it. So I think it's skewed to the right. So I think that answers this first set of questions for number 3.